To bring the event to everyone else's attention, please pull me aside. Let me know. I will try to figure out a way to direct everybody to you and make sure that you can have that conversation. Without any further ado, I think we're going to open up with Eric, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks for the introduction. I'm Eric Martindale. I'm developer evangelist at BitPay, and as you so eloquently put, we're helping businesses accept Bitcoin as a payment option. In fact, our mission, our fundamental mission in life, our existence, is to get every company in the world to accept Bitcoin. And the way we do that is by just really making it easy. So I'm going to give an overview of how Bitcoin came to be, why it exists.
What's a Bitcoin?
What is a Bitcoin? So I'm going to give that overview, how it came to be, who created it, and why it was created. And then I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about what the potential applications are. And then I want you guys to go ahead and think about some questions. If you guys have any questions, any rumors that you've heard, I would love to just be able to field those questions and answer them for you. So in 2008, we're sort of coming out of the tail of the banking crisis. The derivatives and the markets the banks are in serious trouble. At this point, on the cryptography mailing list, so generally there's mailing lists of various interests that you can join and just participate in conversation. These have existed since the 80s. This particular mailing list, the cryptography mailing list, studies a branch of mathematics that is used to encrypt information and encode it so that it can be kept secure and private. A gentleman proposed an idea, a solution to a particular computer science problem known as the Byzantine generals problem. The Byzantine generals problem is described simply as, okay, you have a number of generals who may or may not be loyal to the overall cause of the Byzantine Empire, and they have an objective. They need to conquer the city. In order to do that, they need to coordinate a plan of attack. What time do we attack? How do we attack? But what the generals don't know is who among them they can trust. So they need to come up with some sort of way to coordinate their plan and all agree on the same plan, with the fact being known that there are bad actors within that system. One of the generals could lie, one of the generals could malign and say, oh, we're attacking at noon, and rather than dawn, and the attack fails because they're not all in consensus.
Right.
So this particular problem had a proposed solution by a gentleman on the cryptography mailing list called Satoshi Nakamoto, and he suggested that we could solve this problem and create a new form of digital asset by requiring all participating parties perform some amount of work, some provably difficult amount of work that takes a certain amount of time, and then comparing your answers. And if you both have the same answer, then you know that you can trust the output of that individual. And if you don't have the same answers, you can check with your peers or check your answer because you know your answer is correct, and say, you're lying to me. I'm not going to trust you. So his proposal said we can create a digital asset by requiring computers to do this type of work. And whereas in an existing digital infrastructure, you can copy MP3 files freely if they're not DRM'd, right? You can replicate information effectively, infinitely, which creates a large amount of supply. And if there's a finite demand, it means that there simply is an effectively zero value to that digital good. This is economics, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. What his proposal allowed us to do for the first time in history was to provably say that there is a finite amount of a digital resource. His immediate application with the banking industry ripe with this new problems and the derivatives markets, banks were being bailed out. He said, look, we can create a new currency, for the first time in history, have actual control without having to trust a third party with our monetary system. And this fundamentally was the genesis of Bitcoin. In fact, he created something called the Genesis block a few months later, in the first version of the protocol, in the first version of the software, which he kind of coded together and released to this mailing list after answering some questions by other academics and interested parties. The Genesis block was the first piece of information upon which all future work was to be based. The idea of Bitcoin is you have a sequence of transactions, and anytime you see a transaction, you append it to the list. And everybody keeps a copy of this list of transactions. If you do that, you can create some work to be done on top of that to verify that every party around you has the exact same copy of that ledger. It's a distributed ledger of transactions without having to trust anyone, because you yourself can verify what's happening in that ledger. So the Genesis block, you can tell what Satoshi was thinking when the piece of information that he used to sort of start this network was based on a newspaper article. The title of this article was "Chancellor on Brink of Second Bailout for Banks." And this was the tidbit of information that he seeded into these mathematical problems, these cryptographic problems that allow this proof of work system to function.
Right.
So he created a currency. He created whether we want to call it a currency or a property is open for debate at this point, but I genuinely believe it to be a new asset class. Now we can provably say that I have a certain amount of value of this asset, a certain amount of this asset, which can be sold for something else, can be traded for something else, and no longer do I have to rely on the central banks to tell me how much of this currency exists. Now I can do business with anyone anywhere in the world digitally without anybody's permission or anybody's influence in controlling me to do that transaction. And this is really the fundamental innovation that Bitcoin brings, is sort of this ability to have control of your own finances for the first time in history and do business on your own volition without any outside third party interfering with you. So as a result, we've sort of seen this explosion of businesses growing in ways that they weren't able to before. Now a mom and pop store down the road can now enter the international markets and accept value from anyone, anywhere in the world. If I can ship the product there, I can sell it there. Because now people can have access to this money that's not tied to these lines drawn in the sand or the nation states or the banks. They don't have to go to Western Union, this third party that they have to trust to move their money from location to location. Now we have a way that I can send money directly to you, just like your email address. It's a Bitcoin address that corresponds to your access to funds. I'm going to send money from my Bitcoin address to your Bitcoin address. And without going too far into the technical details, it's all cryptographic. It's built using the same mathematics that say, I can provide a mathematical signature and prove that I am the identity holder behind these funds, and without sharing that signature. So with the credit card system and the banking system, you might have the credit card number is grants anyone who has access to that number full access to your funds. That model is flipped here. It's the same as a checking and an account number with your bank and a routing number. If anybody has those numbers, they can pull money directly from your account. But with Bitcoin, it's a push technology. I'm cryptographically signing, providing a digital signature to move this value from one address to another. And that means that fundamentally, it's a much more secure way of transacting value, especially in the internet. People like to say that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general, I'm sure you'll hear a little bit about Dogecoin or Litecoin. Cryptocurrency in general is effectively the first way to create a push system. And subsequently, we can say that it is money, but designed for the internet. We have many thousands of years of banking infrastructure built up. Centralized banking has really taken control and has locked up our entire government. Our government at this point is tied to the people who have the money. And the reason that is because they control the ability to print it. Bitcoin, there is no longer that third party. And it's fundamentally just a better way to do things, and it restores power to the individual and the business owners who might want to transact without having to deal with government regulation or government interference with their actions. So at that point, I just kind of want to open it up. If you guys have heard any rumors or questions that you have about Bitcoin, I'm happy to answer. But that's effectively the introduction to Bitcoin and why it's powerful.
So are you and BitPay more on the, I mean, I kind of guess what your answer will be, but just to kind of bring up the discussion. Are you guys more on the, oh, please come regulate us, we need regulation side, or are you more on the, we need freedom and freedom is achieved through Bitcoin and the government can go jump in the lake?
So fundamentally,
What was the question?
he's asking what side BitPay's on. Do we want to support the regulators, or do we want to truly believe in the sort of AMCAP idea of Bitcoin itself? And frankly, the answer is it doesn't matter which side we end up on, because Bitcoin fundamentally is a protocol, and in the end, we are going to end up with a system that is decentralized.
Right.
One of the mottos that we use is decentralize all the things. And this starts with the financial infrastructure. We are focusing very much on improving the ecosystem to allow this to develop. But the timelines that we're talking about are possibly decades, right? But right now, the government is going to try to regulate, and that's going to create competition between governments, which is going to, because people now have the freedom to move between governments, or without having to worry about their financial freedom, now we can enable that choice. But what we're focused on is the business aspect. We will answer the regulators' questions, absolutely, but fundamentally what we're focused on is business. We want to empower the business owner. And if that means protecting them from an existing government in which they're currently present, yeah, we're going to try to make that happen so that the business owner is protected. We've testified before Congress before, we've been on special panels. We will answer questions because education is the answer. The government will not always make the best choice, but what we can do is help them make a better choice by making sure that they have the information that they need.